For whatever it's worth, I thought I would make this video. I had a few questions in my own head about where exactly I wish to go with this channel and the videos that I'm making. Obviously, it's about police corruption, about all corrupt authority. I like to do some psychological bits, and I like to do some for the glory of God bits. This one was, I suppose, just to fit into the psychological aspect, something much more personal. As far as why that off-duty police officer stumbled upon my tent the other week. I believe he came back, which he said he originally was going to on one day, that I didn't see him that day. But then when I came back to my tent a couple of days ago, the zips had been pulled apart, and there was like dirt, which obviously if anybody's going to have dirt on their hands, it's going to be somebody who was doing what he was doing last time, and searching for precious metals or old relics in the ground. And it was just, so there's the question of if it was him, why wouldn't you just call out, and if you don't get a response, either assume they're not in, because there was a lock on the front. I always keep my things locked up. Why have a peek in? And I'm sure obviously it's not uncommon to think somebody in a bad situation, particularly if they're homeless. And I know, I can't say for all the homeless people obviously, but I know for a lot of homeless people there are going to be other issues like drugs or alcoholism or bad home lives that effectively would give somebody the incentive to perhaps want to kill themselves. And maybe that was what he was trying to do by opening the zippers, just trying to have a check-in, just to make sure I hadn't, done anything to myself and there was just a body in here under lock and key. I would, however, before I ever did my second schizotypal video, I would want to, there would be one large part of my life that would very much come into effect in that, but it would absolutely overburden the other video. Not in the sense that one thing's more important than the other, just it's a long enough affair in its own right that I figured I'd do it like this. So as I said in my first schizotypal video, the first time I ever fell in love with somebody, changed everything for me. Changed everything. Everything had a new perspective on it. Everything had genuine worth to it. I know one thing that was in my mind and persisted ever since was that the reason I wanted to change myself as well and become a better human being was simply for the thought of, if I can make the world just that little bit better for just that one person, if I could save just that one person, then I would save them all. Them all being everyone, all the bad people, all the hate-filled, violent people. And obviously that can be a very grand spectrum, big and small. It may just be people that you just don't like. It could be some really horrific people. But in my mind, instead of condemning the world for what it was, what it is, for a large part, it instead became about, if I could save that one person, then I would save the whole world. That was a fair trade-off for me, just to make the world a better place for that one person. suppose just because of the circumstances and the events of the whole situation, things didn't necessarily like work out with that person. We were never like officially together or a couple or anything like that. But after I effectively had to lose them from my life, one of the other thoughts that kind of stuck with me was that I would never want to live to lose that feeling again, or to lose whoever that feeling represented again. Like, that feeling was so much to me, it was everything to me. It was, and I say everything, I wish I could narrow it down to just saying it was anything without making it seem insignificant. Because by anything, I mean, like, you could describe it as what it was, like the greatest, grandest thing to ever happen in my life up at that moment. Or you could just describe it as like the table scraps of existence that were just kind of thrown at me. But whatever it was, it meant so much to me, so much to my mind, my heart, my life, that was something. Again, even trying to put it into words, I couldn't even. So long ago now as well, I guess. Like, I was 16, I think. Yeah, I was 16. And so the second time that I fell in love with somebody, I was about to say managed to fall in love with somebody, a few years later, it took me a really long time to not get over, but process how the situation was with this first guy. Because I always say, like, if you love somebody, if you truly love somebody, you never, like, get over it. The same as, like, if you're grieving somebody's death who you loved, you never get over it. You just learn to live with it, live with the nature of the circumstances, however it's played out. And so I had the second guy a couple of years later who, again, just opened up that entire side of me again. Like, I genuinely didn't think was going to happen. I wasn't ever expecting to really find another human being I could connect to on just any level, no matter how mundane or magnificent. And I did with him. And yeah, like, we were such good friends. I even said, obviously, the rings I'm not wearing. Like, we were close enough that he got me a ring on Valentine's Day, but we didn't get rings for each other on Valentine's Day. Like, he went to see who was his girlfriend, and then wanted to spend the rest of the day with me. And he kind of like copied my style, like started growing his hair out, which a lot of guys that end up falling for me do. He wanted to start dressing like me, and yeah. So he wanted to go buy a ring from Argos, and I was like, fuck it, I'll get myself a new one as well. And yeah, it turns out the ring that I was going to get myself, they only had in his size, and the ring that he was going to get himself, they only had in my size. So we just ended up buying the rings that we were originally going to get, and then just gave them to each other. And like, and I still have it to this day. Like, he also gave me a ring that his dead dad gave to him. Like, that's kind of like how close we were, how much we meant to each other. And obviously I can never speak for his feelings or anything, but that is the situation with him. I will talk about more in the second part of the schizotypal videos, as far as this one is concerned. I just wanted to talk about the time when I actually tried to kill myself. Just considering what things are going on in my life right now. As I say, with the Paluchai officer, I assume, trying to have a peek to see if I was just a body. So I finally told this guy how I felt about him. And bear in mind, he was, as I always tend to go for some reason, he was a straight guy. He did that bisexual thing that a lot of people did when they were teenagers, because it was like cool to say you were. And yeah, he and I were just like best friends. Like, he'd text me, like, to talk to me every single day. We'd usually see each other almost every single day. And I so wish I could show a picture of him here, because like he was such a good-looking human being, and I don't mean that in a fickle sense. Like, one of the things, I don't know whether I ever directly said it to him, but it was just one of the reasons I liked the fact that he took so much advice from me and wanted to emulate me, become me so much to a certain degree, was that I just always thought you could change the world, he could change the world, in the sense that if he starts talking, people look at his face and they just melt. Like, he just captivates the entirety of their attention without a shadow of a doubt. And I thought if I could effectively help him on his track, next parallel to my track in the same way, like, we could do a lot of good for a lot of people together. And yeah, when I finally told him like how I felt about him, did it in a stupid way. Like, we were in public and like asked him how he felt, and just because I don't know why that felt like the smart move to me. I think, again, just when I'm surrounded by the people, not just the people I'm comfortable with, my head just works differently. Like, it doesn't work right, it doesn't process shit correctly. And whatever his feelings may or may not have been aside, he didn't reciprocate the feelings that I had. And we did end up, like, I think that had only been maybe a few months that we've been hanging out at that point. And then I did what the title of this video is going to imply, and then again didn't see him for a few months, and then we did start hanging out again, and that's when we had like probably 3 years worth of a friendship that really got to the point where we were like trading rings, and he gave me his dad's one. As you can tell, it's nighttime. I never like making too much noise when I'm making these videos, so I always try and talk in the upper throat, so I'm not coughing properly. When I did try to kill myself, I had, for some morbid kind of reason, when I used to be prescribed antidepressants and some antipsychotics, like, I'd obviously gotten to the point in my life where I didn't want to take them, but I continued to get them prescribed just because they came along with a lot of other things that I would be prescribed, like muscle relaxants and sleeping pills. And I had a bit of a problem with the sleeping pills, which I'm sure I'll probably talk about in another video, but to boil it down, I used to describe it as it would massage your brain into thinking it was dreaming. So, but if you stayed awake instead, like, your brain would just be in this fucking complete other dimension, and like it erased any like social anxiety, and it made me so not comfortable. It made it so much easier just to, be around people and talk to people. But at the same point, I'd find out like the next day that I'd been in town and like been at a pub, been having drinks with people, knocked drinks over and shit like that, and I would have no recollection of even leaving my house the day before. Like, they could fuck you up that badly. And yeah, so the first time when I said to this guy, like, I feel this way about you, blah blah blah, the fact that I was once again in that situation where I had lived to feel the feeling again and then lose it, like, I couldn't cope with it. Yeah, like, it was too much. It's exactly what it says in the box. Like, I never wanted to live to lose that feeling again. Like, it did exactly what I knew it was going to do. Like, it ruined me. So obviously at this point, I was just like, fuck it. I don't care. I have nothing else to live for. Not in a overly dramatic way. Like, I never said anything like that to him. It was just in my own head. It was just like, I know what my life is like, and I know it's always going to be like this, and I can't handle having that fraction of like a life or a soul, or soulmate, I should say, like, actually with me, feeling that and then losing it. I almost want to describe it as like, it's like taking your first baby steps or something. Like, you finally start getting somewhere in life, like the very basic thing you finally have, the very basic thing, and then your legs are just removed from you. So because I'd stopped taking like these antidepressants and these antipsychotics for so long, I'd basically amassed like a good couple of hundred of them. And when I decided that I was going to do what I did, I can't even say how many I had the first time. And it just became a process of, I'd wake up the next day, I wasn't dead, I'd take more. And with all due respect to most people, like I've heard a lot of people in their, suicide stories. And I know most people are like, they say they've had an overdose. In reality, they've had like 7 ibuprofen, a shot of vodka, and they consider themselves dead to the world. When everybody knows that's not going to kill you. And not that I ever wish to encourage somebody, I will say upfront, if for whatever reason you ever do consider taking your own life, and you try and go through with it, just don't ever try and overdose. Obviously you shouldn't try and kill yourself to begin with, but I'm not going to pretend I know everybody's circumstances in life, and I wouldn't necessarily want somebody to live with pain, either emotional or physical. I would never encourage it, but without actually knowing the person directly, I could never discourage it. Like, it's not fair. But don't ever try and fucking overdose, because as you'll find out in the rest of this, like, it's honestly, physically, it was the most painful, like, 3 or 4 months after that in my entire life. Not even the emotional pain on top of it, the physical pain was so bad. Yeah, so in the span of like a week, I'd had like all 300, 400 of these antidepressants and antipsychotics. But then by like the 3rd or 4th day, because I realized nothing was happening, I just started taking everything else that I could get my hands on, just sleeping pills, antihistamines, ibuprofen, paracetamol, anything, any pill medication that I could get my hand on, I fucking took it. Like, I was done with this world. And like, it got to the point where like I was twitching every time I was walking. Like, I was hallucinating most days as well. Like, my mind was so fucked. And it's like you discover exactly how cruel human beings can be. Like, I remember I still had to like go and sign some forms or something back then. I think I may have been trying to apply to get some benefits or something. And yeah, I came out of the office that I had to go to sign some forms, and as I'm walking out, there's just like a group of teenagers, and because I'm like, my legs are like buckling from underneath me as I'm walking. I mean, I probably looked like I was a fucking like serious meth addict, don't get me wrong, but like, they started laughing at me when I went past them, and it was, considering the place where I was in my life and what I was going through, like, that just, I don't even know what I could describe it as right now. It was just like, yeah, just like representation of the entire world, just being like, yeah, fuck the physical side of it that you've overdosed, the emotional thing that you're going through. Like, that's fucking hilarious. That's fucking hilarious that you're in that position. And yeah, it was just so physically painful, so emotionally painful, but the emotional thing was a completely different thing. That was because of the situation with the guy, that the meds were what were causing me the physical pain. Like, I ended up having seizures, like 2 really bad ones, and I've always been curious whether I actually had like a stroke or I had some brain damage after that. I think the first one was when I was actually walking with this friend. I don't know where the fuck we were walking to, but as I found out afterward, I'd literally just like put my hand on his shoulder because he was just walking a little bit ahead of me. We were with a few other people. He's turned around to see what I was going to say, and I've just collapsed onto the floor, started seizing, started foaming at the mouth. A couple of minutes later, however long it was, I've like come to. Somebody's rang an ambulance for me, and I don't know if it was this time when the ambulance was called, or the second time, but or maybe it was both of those times. I'd said to them, "Oh, I've just had a lot of wine today," which I was drinking as well. I've just had a lot of wine today, and I've had my medication, just really kind of downplayed. I mean, I genuinely don't know how the fuck they allowed me to walk out of the ambulances. Still just fucking seizing, or twitching, I should say. I did have, I assume I still have it somewhere, like the consent form to sign off saying like I don't want to be taken hostage, blah blah blah. And like I remember the last time I seen it, the name that I've written it is like so scrawled on, like you can tell that my body is fucked from what my signature looks like. And I don't mean fucked sloppy, I mean fucked like it's everywhere. Like then yeah, like I didn't tell like anybody, I didn't tell my family or anything what happened. I think one friend knew that I'd done it, and that was like my closest friend at the time. And yeah, I ended up having another seizure when we were sat in town, where I've just like slumped onto one of my friend's sides. My friend thought I was coming in for a cuddle, and then I've just fallen off the bench that we were sat on, started having a seizure. Again, fucking foaming at the mouth, twitching. Some passerby or somebody who was in a shop has grabbed like an emergency, mask and like ventilation oxygen thing from a nearby shop. And basically I come to with just this hand in my face with this mask over my face. I think I tried to knock it away at first, but I think it's just 'cause I'm not in the fucking right mind whatsoever. And yeah, that persisted, as I said, for months. Like when that female friend was with me one time, I hadn't smoked weed for a couple of months, just because I didn't have any long-term plans of like, yeah, like let's get high today and I'll have some weed for tomorrow. Like I wanted to be dead every time that I woke up. Like I was sick of being alive. And yeah, I assume it was after a few weeks, I decided to go and grab some weed from somebody, and I couldn't even make it what should have only been a 15-minute walk from my house to the guy who would sell it to me. A half an hour had passed. My friend and I had barely even made it down the road from where I live, because every few steps that I took, I just started running out of breath immediately. I had to stop, had to take my inhaler. It was fucking terrible. Like, she ended up having to call her mum to come and pick us up. She went home, because I know it was really hard for her to see me going through that. Not to talk too quickly about her feelings, but I know that she, like, felt a lot of affection for me, and I'm certain, I know for a fact, it was really hard for her to see me go through that. Especially because she wanted to help, but from the way that I kind of carried myself back then, she knew that, I'm sure she also judged it in her own head, that if she was to try and tell me off or to tell me to go to a doctor or something, she'd probably risk losing me as a friend, just because she knew that I didn't want that. Like, I wanted to die, and I think she knew it was probably just best for her to be there just in case something happened. So she got her mum to come pick us up, dropped me off at the dealer's house. She went home. Yeah, I will just say, like, for the sake of like that medicinal marijuana, I had to have somebody else like roll me a spliff, smoke that, and then like for the first time in however many weeks, couple of months, the seizing actually didn't stop, but it was no longer like full on like vulgar flinching, and to the point where after I'd smoked that spliff, I'd stayed at the dealer's house for like half an hour to an hour. It was a bit of like a chill house as well, you know what I mean? And then walked home very, very slowly, but I actually managed to walk home by myself. And as far as like reducing all of the shit that my body was going through, because it was processing all of these different medications, weed was fucking fantastic for actually ceasing the seizures. Yeah, so after this, the way that I effectively recuperated was, as I said in my schizotypal things, I cultivate a personality, the friend that people need to know, and the rest I could keep inside. And when my mind kind of started to settle back in, and it may have been just because like the chemical imbalance from all the medications kind of leveled out and my brain just dealt with it how it had to. But I got to the point where I kind of realized I was going to survive this. I can't remember the exact wording that I said to myself, but it basically became a thing of, right, I understand I'm not going to ever live a normal life, like, because of my condition. I'm just never going to be like other people. So I need to not live my life. It wasn't like that. I just ended up making myself not do anything that wasn't genuine, to the point where, like, I didn't talk with, like, pitches or tone of voice. And I don't mean that in, like, a purposeful way. It wasn't like I was trying to be like a moody cunt or anything. But it's like, for example, I didn't laugh, like, for months, simply for the fact that, to me, like, laughter, genuine laughter, is if something makes me laugh, like, so hard, like, I can't actually contain it. Like, my body will force me to make that noise and to react that way. And nothing was able to do that, because I genuinely don't find that many things that fucking funny. It's like I didn't laugh for months, and I know it's again, see me in my videos and see me in person now, like, I couldn't actually explain it to you in a way where you'd truly understand, like, how different I was. And this is why I always say, like, I'd gone from developing the schizotypal side to deal with being around other people in my life, and then for the safety of it, I reverted back to my true self, which was the schizoid side, which was, there's not emotion there, but then I refused to allow the schizotypal part to push itself forward in my mind to the point where I would then start acting out, as in acting out, like acting like I was laughing or I was smiling or I was having fun or what have you. I know I was at a pub one night, I just occasionally had to go for, like, a walk, and I'd stop off for a drink and just, like, sit by myself. Some woman came outside to talk to me, and she was saying whatever she was saying, and the difference in having a conversation with me, though I didn't really say anything to her, like, I couldn't put it forward to, but basically it was so, she ended up saying to me, basically, I'm just trying to think of the word for it then, but I really can't put it properly. She ended up saying to me, after she'd, like, done her bit, and I guess she realised I wasn't going to be having a massive conversation, she just turned to me and she just said, so, like, have you just come out of the army or the military, or have you been in the military? Like, completely seriously. And you should have seen me, like, the long hair, the black jacket, everything. Like, didn't look anything like an ex-military guy at all. Not really old enough to be one. But that was, I effectively, the way that I seemed to other people at that point was it like I was suffering from, like, severe PTSD from something. And yeah, I guess in a sense I kind of was. But in my eyes, and I still say to this day, like, that was surprisingly, like, the happiest I've ever been in my life, simply for the fact that nothing was fake and everything was real. Like, I didn't give fake laughter. I didn't give, like, fake face motions. I didn't do anything like that. Like, I kept everything calm and real and inside my own head. Like, I just didn't talk a lot. I feel like there was always something of, like, I literally did, like, think before I said anything, because I didn't want to just say anything just for the sake of making a conversation that people wanted with me. Like, I was trying to look after myself and live my life as honestly as I could, the best that I could. And that's why I know I reverted back to, I suppose what you'd say what I was as a child, but that's not the case. It's reverted back to the inner core of myself, which would be not to just define it so shallowly, but the schizoid personality disorder side. And yeah, that persisted for a few months afterward as well. And then I do remember I'd been in town for something, and as I was heading to get the bus home, I get home and I get a message later on that day from the guy who, not that I killed myself, I tried to kill myself because of him, because that's absolutely not fair at all, but because of the situation with him, like I ended up trying to kill myself. I ended up getting a message from him, and he was just saying like, you know, oh, I saw you at the bus station today. Like, I was going to come say hi, but you already got on the bus, and you know, I haven't spoken to you in a while now. Like, is everything okay? Do you want to meet up? So I did. I went to meet him, and again, like, we just went to a pub where we knew that we could just be alone. And again, I mostly just let him talk about whatever it was that he wanted to talk about. Just, you know, a catch up, mostly from his side. And again, my personality, if you will, the way that I was holding myself, conducting myself, but I hate to use that word because it was just me being the absolute most truthful, honest version of me. The most complete, the most at peace, at one version of myself. But that just happens to seem like it's just really depressive and silent, and I will say stoic actually, because that is absolutely, because the unfortunate thing is I can describe it as if it was another person now, because I guess I'm not. I have come back out of that phase, because now that things have gotten easier, but that's a whole other video. Yeah, like I know we were talking at one point, and I said one of the very few things that I'd say to him, and yeah, for whatever it was, it must have obviously been something that, again, just made me sound like I was so depressed or something. Not in a like a, oh, I'm depressed way, but just something that just indicates like this person has like the weight of the world on their shoulders. And I just remember just out of nowhere, because like the way that we were sat on a bench, so if you can get in the light, so the bench is facing that way. I was sat like that, and he was sat like that, like with his legs on either side, just directly facing me, and I was just facing that way. And I'd made sure that we were sat right by a wall, so I could just stare at a wall and didn't have to deal with other people. And yeah, I said something, and I just remember him just like throwing his arms around me and like pushing his head into my chest. And again, for the first time in months, that was the equivalent of the first laughter that I had. But except it wasn't laughter, it was a smile. Because I love this guy so much, and I still always will. As anybody I've ever been in love with, I'll always love them. Like, you'll never get me to change that, because that emotion means so much to me, that the people I feel it for mean so much to me, and I'm never going to disrespect those people, nor my own history, my own past, my own emotions by ever saying bad things about them. Not that I have a bad word to say about him, but yeah, he like when he put his arms around me, I smiled for the first time in 3 months. I had no control over it, to the point where it's like, I'll use the term a broke character, just for the sake of getting on with the story. But yeah, like I turned, like I couldn't effectively control my body, because again, it was a genuine emotion, a genuine reaction. And I just like turned to smile at him, and I think I said, "What are you doing?" Like putting his arms around me. Because again, I was in that place in my life where I wasn't, if I'd see a friend, I wouldn't like open up for a hug or anything like that. Not in a bad way, but it was just, I suppose I wasn't there in those conversations. I was in my own head, and I wouldn't let other people's need for me to have a personality that they wanted to talk to dictate how I acted. But yeah, he did. It made me smile for the first time in months, like nobody else been able to. I turned around and said, like, "What are you doing?" And I felt his arms like immediately snatch away, because of the way that he pressed his head into my chest, like he was facing behind us, and he's looked, and the speed at which I felt him snap away, I immediately knew, like, oh, obviously that there are people looking at us. And I turned around, and there were two like chavvy guys that you would have thought on any other day, probably not that they would have been taking the piss out of us, but they wouldn't have given a shit about us, I guess. And they weren't. They had both turned from their seats, like over their shoulders, listening to what I had been saying. And again, like as soon as I turned around to look at them, like they turned around, like no disrespect shown or anything, but it was just like, I suppose just the energy I gave off, it commanded attention, or I don't quite know how to put it, because again, it always sounds so fucking big-headed when you say things like that. But unfortunately, that is just, I have a million of stories, not quite like that one, but Again, that's another video for another time. Yeah, he brought me. He didn't bring me back out of anything, but like the absolute emotion for him was still there. Like, I don't think anybody else could have like made me smile like that, and I'm sure it was something I absolutely needed to kind of bring myself closer out of a complete kind of suppression of anything, you know. I'm sure it needs to be like a mix and match of the two. And yeah, that was so like not because of him, but because of him partly and another friend who ended up becoming like my best girlfriend. The schizotypal thing kind of got drawn out more and more because people would want to see me so often, like all day, every day. And if they weren't seeing me, they want to be texting me or calling me. And this was somebody who I've explained in the past needs to be like alone for a shockingly long amount of time. It's like you just running car tires nonstop, like they wear out eventually. But I mean, I was fucking great for probably about a year and a half, 2 years. Like my life was, as I said in my last video, I had the completely different perspective simply for the fact that, well, I said at the end of my last video, it's not necessarily being emotionally invested. I could see things a very different way, more analytically cold, but because I then still knew to bring some perception of emotion into it, I could find what would work, because I do know what emotions are. I could find what would work and I could play to that, and as I said, like I could really help people in a manner in which other people wouldn't necessarily be able to or wouldn't want to, because it could risk them feeling negative emotions, as opposed to just helping the person no matter what the cost is to yourself. I'm drifting here from what I wanted this video to be. I don't even know what I wanted this video to be. I just thought I'd see what would happen if I just talked about what I'd done. I feel like for what it says, it's only 37 minutes so far. I know I can talk about the suicide situation for ages, but I suppose if I'm trying to buckle down on the videos that I'm doing to make them more concise, I don't have anything else immediately in my head that I would want to speak about for during that time. I think I just wanted to state that part of my history, just for the record. For what record, you might ask? Trust me, the record. It is all relevant. If that guy ever does see this, Joey, if you ever do see this, like honestly, thank you for I'll just thank you, I guess, for being in my life at the time when you were. And you know, I only wish the best for you. And I am sorry that I ended up kind of ruining what should have been like the most special, important moment in our lives together, because I was on them fucking sleeping pills again. And just to correct you all about drug addiction, or to set the record straight on this, doesn't matter how much I may have felt I needed those sleeping pills, when they cost me the most important person in my life after the suicide and everything else, and I got back on them. The day after, I quit those meds cold turkey, never touched them since, because I was taking them to make myself comfortable around other people, but it ended up taking away from me the one person who actually mattered. And I quit them. I quit those meds cold turkey, never touched them again, never wanted to, never will do. is more important. You were more important to me. I suppose I'll go into further detail about that in another video. God bless as always, friends. Hope. I don't know. I said hope this helps, but I don't know what else it's going to offer. Night.